So there's been so much talk, of course, given the fact that Mark Carney, the Canadian delegation, were over in China and came back with a deal to bring a fixed number of Chinese EVs, electric vehicles, into Canada, and reaction, of course, from the auto industry here. But then there's the question, and this is really an interesting take, because while we're all so focused on these cars, and I believe the number is they'd have to be under $35,000 Canadian, so it's not all of the Chinese EVs. Some are more expensive, but this particular group of them. And people complained, about a lot of different things that would hurt the auto industry here, even though the Prime Minister said it really represents only about 3% of the cars sold. But then the issue came up in a piece I just read, suggesting, while we assume, or we're told that these are cheap cars, we assume that they can't be very good because, to go buy a comparable car here, like a Tesla, for example, which costs literally twice as much, maybe even more, the tech can't possibly be as good, right? Otherwise, how could they sell them for so cheap? Turns out that may not be the case. Lorraine Sommerfeld is a reporter for Driving.ca. Has been writing about cars for the last, 15 or 16 years and is on the line. Lorraine, thanks so much for your time today.
No, anytime.
So let me get into this because I know that quote that really sticks out, and I remember seeing this at the time when the CEO, believe it or not, of Ford, right? Ford, who had been driving one of these cars and said, I've been driving this for 6 months now, a Chinese EV, and I don't want to give it up. So in essence, saying, I guess the quiet part out loud, their tech is pretty good.
The tech is outstanding, and the Canadian Auto Dealers Association, they took I think 12 dealers from across the country on a field trip to China last year. Every single dealer is quoted in their piece, mind blown. They're like, we can't even get close to this. And Farley, as you said, the CEO of Ford in the U.S., he has gone on to say a lot more than I didn't want to give it back. Mm-hmm. He is saying we're going to be toast because we can't compete with this. And it was just very eye-opening to me because whenever we see the headlines about bringing in Chinese vehicles and people are freaking out, especially a lot of dealers, I think it's going to come down to not about cheap cars. It's going to come down to the fact that consumers want reliable cars. They want better cars than what we're getting. And we've never paid as much as we are right now.
Right.
And we're getting less reliable.
I think you mentioned in your piece as well, talk about, reliable Ford, since we're talking about Ford. What, they have 15 recalls over the course of a year?
110.
110?
110 in 2025. It was a record, not the kind of record they want.
Yeah. So there you go. And as you said, that's happening while the price of cars and trucks continues to climb.
Yeah, well, between 2019 and 2024, the average cost of a car in Canada went up 60%. 60,
Yikes.
Which that's why it's bigger than your mortgage payment in some cases, like it's obscene. And the quality, because I believe the tech is being pushed out before it's ready, every manufacturer is struggling. Like there's way more recalls than I recall from 10 or 15 years ago. Doubled up on the word there, sorry. So I used to defend recalls. It's like, a manufacturer's getting ahead of a problem. Don't freak out. Take it in, get it fixed. Well, now we can't keep up. There's too many recalls. The stuff's being pushed out before it's ready, and consumers are the ones paying for that in not having a car for months and things like that.
Yeah.
When you buy a new car, you really think it should be okay for a long time.
Well, so what's this? I mean, what do you think will happen as a result of the Chinese situation where we bring in these EVs and people discover, because when I asked the question of our listeners one day and said, hey, if these cars come here, would you buy one? I would say much more than a majority, almost everyone said absolutely. If they come in at that price and we can buy them, why wouldn't you? Why would you spend twice as much to buy one that just was manufactured somewhere else?
Well, I think we have to throw a little bit of a flag on a play here. They're not going to be cheap. Like we see $10,000 in China for some of these. They're not going to come over here and land and be that cost. I think what we have to acknowledge is that 49,000, they didn't pull that number out of thin air. That's about how many we brought in from China in 2023. 44,000 of them were Teslas that were built in China.
Right.
Volvos are built in China. Polestars built in China. So that number came from what we were already bringing in from Chinese cars. And yes, the goal is to bring in EVs that are, we're going for that 35,000 mark. It doesn't mean you're going to get a $20,000 EV.
But even if you got a $40,000 EV,
yes.
That's still half of what you'd pay to buy a Tesla.
I agree with you. And that's why a lot of people, even people that are, I call them, you'll get my ice out of my cold dead hands, even they're going, oh, maybe, because again, the cost of all cars is so astronomical. Consumers are looking for a break. And with an EV, you don't have the fuel costs, and the Chinese tech is so far ahead of North American tech that the cars are better for the most part. And hopefully we can build them here.
Well, okay, so
for Hyundai to build here.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand it. It seemed to me, and I remember noticing at the time when Mark Carney made that announcement about bringing these Chinese EVs here, he also said they were in the process of, and he didn't say a deal had been done, for the Chinese to somehow end up doing some kind of manufacturing here. Is there more on that, or do we know what that means?
We don't have details on that yet, but because of the way the auto industry is global, we know that. We also know that Ford, Stellantis, and GM have been fading out of Canada for 25 years now. They're just a shadow of what they were. We still want to have an auto industry. Toyota and Honda are our leaders, but it's not that we're trying to pick on GM or Ford. They have left us. They've gone. They're American car manufacturers. They're leaving. We need to replace them, and we have to look forward. The same way in the 80s, we let Japan in, build here. Now Japan, no one gets all cranky about that. They think it's amazing. So we have to evolve and go forward in this global industry, and let's see who we can get to build cars here. We have great car makers here. Our people are skilled. The tech is amazing. The resources are there. So it's not about, kicking Canadian jobs to the curb. It's about evolving those jobs and keeping the industry strong, because it's fading. We can't rely on those three manufacturers. They're American. That's their interest. That's what they're doing. They're taking care of themselves, not Canada.
I read the other day that we're actually making half as many cars now as we did 10 years ago, actually producing those cars in Canada.
Yeah. We're down to about 1.2 million, and at peak it was 2.5 or 2.7 back in 01. So it's just over the last 25 years. When we signed NAFTA, that was the worst thing for the Canadian car industry, because all the jobs, we have high-paying jobs here. Well, they all went to Mexico. And the numbers are almost identical. What Mexico gained is what we lost, because they have cheap workforce.
The one thing I did hear, too, is you say that, and I think to myself, the argument against the Chinese buying or doing anything here manufacturing-wise is, well, hey, in China, you can build one of these because you're paying workers next to nothing, where if you came to Canada to build, we have unions here, we have minimum wages here. How would that ever happen?
Well, the same way it had to happen with the American manufacturers and the Japanese manufacturers. This is how we run our car industry. And in the U.S., even though they're repatriating a lot of jobs to the U.S., it's into red states that have no unions, like Kentucky and Louisiana. So even though, the U.S. is like, we're bringing all these American car manufacturers home, it's not to Detroit. It's not to traditional, areas where we do car manufacturing. It's to states that have very weak regulations and no union. And they're not great jobs. They're not the jobs we're imagining for a car industry.
So how do you imagine, when this comes to fruition, how does this play out in your mind? Canadians will be accepting of these cars simply because they're less expensive and the tech is really good. So that's enough motivation to buy one, and then what?
I think that's enough to get people talking. I think we have to look a little deeper than those kind of headlines, and I think it's dangerous to say, hey, cheap cars for everybody. I think that's bad. This needs to be a multi-pronged thing, which is what I think the feds are doing, which is about jobs, other manufacturers, battery plants. We have resources. We have a phenomenal skill set here, and our universities are amazing. So it's looking ahead in this industry, and it's not just, hey, everyone gets a cheap car. That's what's going to get people into the conversation as consumers, but I think they're also going to be kind of turned on by being promised reliable cars.
Listen, it's fascinating, and we're heading in that direction. We know these cars are coming, and we'll see how things turn out. Lorraine, thanks so much for your time today. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take good care.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.